Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started. Welcome to our session. My name is Mitch Farbstein. I am the Vice President of Sales of Feith Systems, and we're going to take a little journey today. Might be a little different than what you're used to. We're going to take you down to the universe, or up into the universe, to kind of explore the idea of records management. How many of you have implemented a records management system in your group or organization? You got a couple. Oh, yeah. Can we... Yeah. Is that better? Yeah, I want you to hear this, though. I want you to suffer through this.
Is that better?
Is that better? That better? Ah. An AV man. Thank you very much. Okay, I will try to remember. If not, just raise your hand and I'll put my mouth closer to the mic. Okay, so Tom here, who is our regional manager out of Fairfax, is joining me and will chime in as we go through the presentation. This is not the definitive answer to all your records management issues, problems, considerations. The approaches are as vast as the universe. Okay, there's a lot of different ways of doing it. There's some good ways and there's some not so good ways, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So, be a shining star, not a black hole. How do you implement records management so that you're successful doing it? That's really the goal. The practical records management we'll talk a little bit about that. How do you measure success? We'll talk a little bit, we'll give you the advertisement at the end about who we are, but I'll tell you just right up front, we've been around for 35 years, and we're a software development organization that implements business process and records management systems. So that in a nutshell is what we do. If you have questions, we'll try to answer them as we go through. If we don't get to them, we're in booth 1005. And so you can stop over there and we'll be glad to talk to you about some specific things that you have. Okay, Tom. All right, so today's goal is understanding culture and how it affects your ability to implement records management. We'll talk about different methods for acceptance. How do you capture the different objects that are in your inventory of records that you need to save, the governance and the transparency approach that seems to be evident right now with making your information exposed and accessible when it needs to be. We'll talk about discussing the measures of success and familiarize you a little bit with the platform that we can provide to you. Okay, Tom. So, parallel universes. Technology basically governs the way people do things, all right? But culture influences whether it's going to be successful or not. I heard a saying years ago that culture eats everything, and it truly does. Technology on its own does not fail. What fails is the ability for the culture to adapt to the technology. Now, in a parallel universe, they really become the same thing. You have to have the culture ingrained with the technology, you have the technology ingrained with the culture. So we find that the biggest obstacle, and I've been doing this for 35 years, I have found that records management, to implement an automated system, is probably the most challenging technology for an organization because people don't truly understand the value. And we're going to talk about value in a few minutes. So basically you have this movement all the time between these two universes of how do you implement the technology and how do you get the culture to accept it. Tom? Okay, so let's talk about RMA's uniqueness and why it's an obstacle to implement. Think about a lot of the applications that you currently have that are sources for generating records. So you have HR. Well, we all know we have HR records that need to be saved for a period of time, a certain disposition schedule. When does it, can you get rid of it so it's not available for discovery? And when do you have to freeze it so that if it's a legal process that's taking place, no one will delete it by mistakes? Okay, so human resources is like a cluster, and then you have accounting, another cluster. Let's say you have Whereas maybe you had PeopleSoft for HR. For your accounting, you have Oracle Financials, another source of records. Oracle Financials, though, and a lot of your ERP systems really have transactional information that may constitute a record at some point in the process. It may not start out as a record, but at the end of that process, you paid a bill, you received an invoice, that may be part of the record. Okay, Tom. Look at another area, manufacturing. So let's say you have SAP for your manufacturing. Some organizations have all of these. And so now you start thinking, God, my records can come from a lot of different areas. I need to be aware of where they are. And when I assess what kind of records management system I want to implement, do I know all these items that are in my inventory? Okay, Tom. And I won't go too further with all the different ones, but legal is the same type of thing, contracts and so on, that you need to store. But in each case, your whole organization is not concerned about all these different applications. You have clusters of people that are concerned about legal or, you know, the financials, whatever it may be. So it's not touching everybody in your organization. Okay, Tom. And procurement's the same type of thing, so maybe you have a REBA. Okay, so let's talk about uniqueness and email. How many have email systems? Oh my goodness. And how many also have email systems that you use at home for your personal use? Okay, so here's this cultural mentality that says you've been exposed to it in your business, and that's typically where our first exposure is, and now all of a sudden we also do it for pleasure. That's great. You love email because it's really an active value technology, meaning that you get a reward every time you use it, okay? Although you get a lot of spam, they have to open up, there's no reward in that, but in terms of business operations and communicating with your friends and your family and everything like that, there's tremendous value in that. So there is a reward, and you say, you know what, I gotta learn email, I gotta do this. I resisted text messaging for a long time. I'm the older set, but I do it now all the time. And text is another source of records. So email in the culture, it actually changed the culture in terms of how people work. Okay, Tom? All right, let's talk about records management. The last time your records management system stopped, how many of you were totally impacted and you couldn't do your work? A couple, not very many, okay? What happens when your email system stops? You get panicky, because that's where your work is. And that's what you have to consider, that when you're changing a culture, if you can show the value of why you're doing it, then it eventually will become more acceptable to your audience. And records management, as a revolutionary implementation, will not be successful. I can tell you that based on experience. It has to be a transitional approach. You have to take it slowly. You have to figure out the things that are probably the easiest to get in or the most important to the organization in terms of a record in the organization. So the records management part is very, very valuable, less so to the individual, let me flip it, but more so to the organization. There's tremendous organizational value for records management. And a lot of people have to recognize that within the organization because, as I said before, implementing it has been a struggle for most organizations, and a big part of that is because of the funding issues that are surrounding it. Regardless of whether there's a mandate from the president or not, if you're a federal executive branch office, you still have to do it, and now you have to kind of find the funds to allow you to implement a solution. So organizational value, a lot of different points in the spectrum, in the universe. The legal side of it, you know, you have to save contracts, you have to save employment agreements, you have to save, if you're doing intellectual property management, all these things are of great value to the organization. There's a dollar cost to produce it, but there's a more costly event if you don't save it, and you have to produce it, and you can't. And you have everybody scrambling around your organization to finding these documents, objects, emails, whatever the case may be, because they're all stored in all those disparate systems that I talked about earlier. Okay, so you have a historical perspective. You know, if you have memorandums from the president or certain higher-ups in agencies or CEOs of companies, you know, and in terms of the history of the company, you know, the charter of the company, all these things are records that are important from a historical value to the organization. You know, military records, okay, deceased records from military participants and so on. These are very important historical records. The Declaration of Independence, you can scan that in, it's an historical record, and you want to maintain it. Institutional memory. How does my organization run? What are the policies? How do I rebuild the organization if we have a disaster? Where is that content? It's not just data. in a computer. It's also the memory of how the organization got to where it is today and what are the policies that govern it going into the future. Information consolidation. Again, going back to all those different disparate systems, your information is all over the place. And that's the challenge with records. Email, you know, it's coming through Exchange, it's coming through Communicate, it's coming through, you know, Lotus or Gmail. You have the knowledge of where this stuff is stored. All this other stuff is all over the place. The idea with records management is that if you implement the system successfully, you will have the ability to access that information, maybe not in one complete source, but with relative knowledge of where these silos of information are, and that things are in there, and they are tamper-proof, and nobody modified them. Sustainability. Think about what happens if you think about your records retention schedules. There's things that have to be retained for 7 years, 3 years. There's other ones that have to be retained in the energy environment, nuclear plants, 10,000 years. Okay, will your system be available 10,000 years ago? I know I'm going to be around. I'm not sure your system will be, but that's a consideration. You know, if I buy a product, is it a cobbled together product that a piece of that product from one vendor may not exist later on? How do I transition, you know, my Word documents that are saved as Word documents to the next version of whatever Word ends up being? Okay, these are all considerations. So what I'm trying to do today is kind of just stimulate your mind. I'm not trying to say this is the way you do it, but these are the things you have to think about. And when you evaluate systems and decide you are going in that direction, or reevaluate systems, which a lot of people have done, you need to take all these facts, variables into consideration to really know what you're getting yourself into. Cost effectiveness, let's throw it out the door. Okay. It's very, very difficult to truly cost justify a records management system. How it typically happens, it happens in arrears. You have a lawsuit, you have a congressional review of the information you have, and you can't find it. That is a cost to the organization. There are organizations still today that will take emails, Word documents, print them out, and scan them in, okay, and store them as images, okay? Not the most productive way of doing records management, but that's what they have today, and that's what they use. Okay, Tom. All right, road to success. Okay, where's the value, and how do I get through this, and what do I have to consider as I'm moving through the universe of records management and the obstacles that I may face? And there are obstacles all over the place, the big universe. Okay, Tom. Okay, no start. Basically, nothing's happening. Nothing will ever happen. You're just kind of stuck at that point, and you just wait for something that kickstarts the growth of a star. How many people are in this position that you really, you know it's a needed technology, but you just can't get there? Anybody? You got to come to our booth then, because we have a product to sell you. So anyway, so there's no way this is going to happen, and we find this a lot of times. It just goes on for years. People are talking about, you know, the records management side of it and never implement anything. Tom? All right, didn't see that coming. Okay, so what happens when the president issues the mandate for the executive branch to go out and implement a records management system? All right. There is, I didn't see that coming. I never budgeted for it. I don't have the resources for it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But you have to do it over a certain period of time of many, many years. Or a legal action takes place that, you know, you're being sued for a particular reason. Okay, and what is the cost of the organization if you lose that case? We have a customer in the paint industry that took all the records, scanned them in from the 1930s. They were basically the chemical cards for the paint. They had them, and when they went to court for lead, they were able to reproduce card after card after card, the material that was in it, and they won the case. Because opposing counsel say, well, this paint had lead in it. And they say, no, here's the history, here's the card, it did not. But they had it at their fingertips, and that saved them a tremendous amount of money. And then you have things like, again, congressional investigations and so on and so forth, where everybody's scrambling to get all this information while they're not doing their other work. So there's a big cost to the organization. Didn't see it coming, but I guarantee it'll start the process of looking at records management. Okay, wrong purpose. I thought it could do that. You know, I bring in a records management system that is supposed to handle, you know, information I have in SharePoint or my file serves and so on. Got it implemented. Oh, you know what? I forgot about email. I thought it could do that. Well, it's a little different technology, and you need the ability to do the different types of technologies that or the different types of kind of applications or data stores that you have in your organization and manage that too. So a lot of times it's a document management system is not a records management system for those, you know, who are unfamiliar with the differences between the two. There are differences. Document management just kind of allows you to go through the process. SharePoint is a good document management system to create content. For true records management, you have to go a little step further to do that. Okay, Tom. Obstacles, it was all going so well. Okay, vendor goes out of business, then what do you do? What do you do with the migration that you have to go through? What about, again, cobbled together solutions where part of the vendor solution goes away? What do I do when I don't have budget? What is it costing me? What's the long-term cost of ownership? How do I budget out in the future? Because again, these systems have to be sustainable for a long period of time. And you need to have transition plans to manage that. Tom? Okay. Where do we go wrong? Here's the black hole beginning. You need to look at really what your costs are for implementing this. And there's many different costs. There's your own resource costs. There's the planning cost. Where do I find sustaining money going, you know, out into future years? When my archive grows so large, what other technology can I bring in to transfer all this information to so that I can keep moving year after year, or 10 years and 20 years and 30 years, and the history of how you sustain this solution? That's a cost to the organization, and it's a big cost. This is the problem with implementing. And if you don't do it right the first time, you're going to try it a second time. We've had the agencies that have gone through 3 iterations of this, and now they're finally getting it right because they didn't have the expertise to start with. So they don't understand all the things all the variables that go into it. And again, it's not just technological variables, it's funding variables, it's governance variables, it's setting up your file plans, setting up your categories. There is work to be done, and that's a cost to the organization. Huh? All right, so let's go through. We went through all the challenges, and there's a million more. Now we look at, a star is born. How does this star get to be to the point where it's shining and it gives you great value? That's all you really care about, that there's value in this. It fits the budget. There's flexibility for new technologies. With the advent of all the social media, how do I get the stuff that people are doing on Facebook? How do I do this, the tweets and the blogs and all that information, which in a lot of cases is truly a record for your organization? What do I do with video? What do I do with voice? Again, all these things need to be at least thought through a little bit at the beginning, and I can guarantee in a couple more years there's going to be a new technology coming out. You need to understand the platform really does need to be flexible. It needs to take information in from your legacy applications or just transactional information, and not an image, and not a picture, and not an email. It's just data. We have one customer who has a very complex structure for capturing information related to processing requests for human capital as well as goods. And each transaction is very complex. It touches a lot of points. All they do is collect data. At the end of that process, there's a record there, but what's the record? The record is some view of all that information in one page or one document that gets what they call materialized, or you're taking the data and you're putting in so it looks like a traditional record, and they save that. That's very important to have that kind of capability. Okay, and again, we've talked about sustainability. I won't go any further, and the movie's not too bad if you want to see that sometime. Okay, Barbra Streisand. All right, shining star, that's what you want to reach. All right, you want to get to the point where this is somewhat self-sustaining, and the way that happens, you have both the policies that govern the records, and you have the policies that govern the people who are putting records into the system. Okay, you need to have discipline of your employees to be successful. Okay, again, another cost to the organization, but something that needs to be thought through. And if you do all these things, the star will shine eventually, but it will take some time. Okay, Tom. Okay, practical approach. First thing is to evaluate your cultural resistance. Take a look at your organization. How hard has it been to implement other systems in the past? You know, did they resist, you know, the idea that the interface is a little bit different? If I can go in there, if you're a SharePoint organization, and you can go in there and say, you know what, you don't have to do anything that's different today than you've done in the past. You have the interface, use it, continue to use it, all right? But we'll let you know that the records may not be stored long-term in SharePoint. It may be in another records management system. Or if they're stored in SharePoint, you can still get at them, but they're still records managed, all right? You get through a lot of resistance if you let users continue to use the interfaces that they have. And the real benefit is if you can make all the connections in the back end, you will be successful because they don't see the pain of changing. So you have this cultural resistance that you need to get over. You need to assess what that might be. Taking inventory. We kind of talked a little about at the beginning, the different types of applications that you have. You know, what do you want to do with email? How important is email to you? I think it's very important in terms of records, and it gets more important every day. So that's a part of your inventory. You have Word documents, you have file shares, you have different areas within that big, wide organization, either locally or in a distributed environment, that you need to have access to, okay? Find the budget. No, anybody here have problems with budgeting right now? Yeah, okay. Even though there's a mandate out there for the executive branch, you're going to have a challenge with budgeting. So you got to look at what is the most cost-effective types of solutions that you can bring in, and how do you get, you know, senior management to say, yeah, this is a valuable proposition. We have to do it, and hopefully you can find the budget. And there's the ongoing cost of it as well. Assembling the team. Typically, records managers are not living in a vacuum. They can't totally make the decision. They need the input of different organizations that they're dealing with, that they have to get the information from, that they have to get buy-in from. And that is a challenge. But what you need to look at are, you know, the business owners, from a records management perspective, and you need to look at the IT part of it and make sure that your resources are available. And IT will tell you, this is where we store this is where we store that. In the virtual world, you don't know where anything's stored anymore. Is it up in the cloud? How do I connect to the cloud and bring records down that are there into the system as well? Usually the IT department needs to absolutely participate in this to be successful. Yeah.
And Mitch, for that team assembly, I would also recommend that you bring in your external and internal counsel, because we've seen a project which went along for a year or so, everything was going well, and then they were ready to execute, pull the trigger on it, and then they brought in external counsel and they said, no, we weren't involved early on, not happening. So bring them in, form your team.
Good point. And obviously your vendor becomes part of your team too, and understanding the technology and understanding your culture in terms of how they can successfully help you do this. We got about 5 minutes, so I'm going to have to start speeding it up. I've gone pretty fast, but we'll go at the speed of light here. Evaluate solutions. Develop policies and file plans. Talked a little about that already. And your records managers know what to do with that. That's what their job is. Evaluate solutions. There's a number of vendors out there. Part of the evaluation for a lot of organizations looking at the DoD 5015 certification. The beauty of the certification is the product actually went through a test period with JITC, which is a testing agency for all kinds of things, part of the DoD, and that gives you at least some comfort level that when you retain something, delete something, purge something, that it actually takes place. Set realistic goals of achievement and measurement. What indicates that I've been successful? That's where you look at this phased approach. Let's get one success, and then the next success, and the next. Because if you get people using it and say, it's not so hard, they tell their friends, and their friends say, yeah, it's okay, it's not so bad, we can do it. But you can establish progress, you can establish policy based on the first success. Oh, we didn't do it exactly right. Now we know what to do with the second phase, and not trying to do everything at one time. And then after you get through all this stuff, Obviously, you can go on vacation and breathe easy and retire. And that's a great thing, knowing that you've been part of the implementation of something that may go on for hundreds of years. Pretty cool. Okay, Tom. All right, I've given kind of the general presentation, you know, up in the universe. This is a representation of Feith's customers. It's not all our customers. There's organizations in the federal agency. There's ones in the DoD, which obviously is part of the federal agencies. There's commercial ones. There are public sector companies and organizations as well. The platform that we have, it's called BridgeLogic. The product that's for RMA specifically is RMA IQ. Each one of these customers touch that whole suite of products that we have. We learn from every one of these customers the kinds of information that they store in us. It's not just records management. And we enhance the product to be able to integrate with all kinds of legacy applications and to assemble the information and provide a true records management solution for them. Tom, next slide. Okay, so if you think of records management, it's just not records management. It's workflow. Records management is a business process management concern, all right? Because things have to flow. Things have to be captured. Things have to flow. Things have to be reviewed for disposition. Things have to be declassified if you're in the military or other agencies. So it incorporates business process, obviously records management. This document management as a front end. So there's some document management capabilities that you need unless you already have a document management system. Line of business applications, we've talked about that in terms of the integration. E-discovery is important. What do you do if you go out and you need to do e-discovery and you have all these disparate documents, Word documents, emails, faxes, scanned images? How do you get them out of the system in one package to present to somebody who has to review this? You need to be able to render all these different types of objects into, let's say, one PDF. The value of that is that somebody doesn't have to have all these different applications to open up what you've sent them. So for internal review, for congressional reports, you have a complete package that itself can become a record at that point. Okay, I got a couple more minutes. I'm going to stop. There's some other couple of things, obviously email and the capture of all this, but I want to give you a few minutes if you have any questions. And I'll try to answer them here. We got 3 minutes, but like I said, come over to booth 1005, and we'll be glad to spend as much time as you need to understand more of what we do in records management in general. Yes, sir. Good question.
Repeat the question.
The gentleman is asking, are, you know, in some of these record management implementations, are they all capturing email as part of the record repository? No. Part of it is that they don't understand their own policies yet. Some of them are just saying, my records policy for email is to purge everything in every 90 days, and I'm not going to worry about it. It doesn't hold water anymore. They're going to be called to the carpet. People are going to say, no, you got to start saving, you got to produce this stuff because it's so important as a record. It's probably the easiest record. It's the easiest record to capture and maintain if you do it right, because it's just coming in through one stream or a couple of servers and you're done. So, and a lot of people are just archiving their emails. They don't know how to find them, but they say, yeah, we got a retention schedule and nobody can get to them. So, but as they look at their full universe, they know it's part of the records management approach. Anybody else? Questions? Got I covered everything. Okay.
I'd just like to add that I'm the federal manager for Feith and the records management guy. I'll be giving a demonstration at 1 o'clock at our booth. Our booth is right over there by the escalator, number
1005.
1005. And so at 1 o'clock I'll be giving a presentation, and you're welcome to get a little more detail on the system that we use for records management. See you there.
Okay, thank you all. We appreciate your attention, and maybe we'll see you at the booth. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of the conference.